Okay, I think we'll start. Welcome everyone to after a short break for the summer to the next in our sort of Zurich Municipal risk series. Today we're talking about cyber. So my name's Alex Bedford. I'm the head of customer and partnerships here at Zurich Municipal, and I'm joined today by Arun Banerjee, who may be familiar to some, if not all of you, as our cyber risk expert from Zurich Resilience Solutions. So I'm really pleased because his presentations are always really interesting, but also entertaining, which is always a good thing on a Friday. So as we go through, please do ask questions in the chat or in the Q&A as Arun is talking. We will wait and we'll ask them at the end. We've got time at the end to do a Q&A and suck all that insight out of Arun. So please do post them. I'll remind you again at the end. The session's being recorded and will be circulated to all of you. It will be a YouTube link for you to watch again or share with others in your organisation. We won't be circulating the slides, you'll just get the recording, so you get the context of what Arun was talking about as well. So today, cyber risk. Is ever increasing. I think the numbers of people who are interested in this topic is indicative by the numbers of you who signed up for this webinar. Ever increasing regulation around this too. The regulation is getting tougher with the cybersecurity and resilience policy statement and bill upcoming. And we're all acutely aware of the need to manage cyber risk. Arun will be talking about building cyber resilience through that as being the sort of end game that we're aiming towards. The thing I often hear is, we know we need to manage it. It's very expensive. We've got to put a lot of resources into this. How do we know we're doing the right things? Real focus in relation to your context. So every organisation's cyber risk is slightly different. So what's your context? What should you be doing? And how can you be increasing the resilience for your organisation and for the communities that you serve, most importantly? So with that, I'm just going to hand over to Arun because he's the expert, and I will listen along with the rest of you and see you at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, and good morning, everyone. So I will share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Alex, can you see the screen? Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Okay. I was talking with Alex a couple of days back, okay, about this session, and Alex was telling me that Alex has recently been to the Tower of London, okay. And that was sort of my inspiration behind choosing this as the background to start my presentation. Sort of like the crown jewel. Okay. And we were talking about when I'm sure a lot of you has been to the Tower of London. When you go to where the crown jewels are displayed, you are not allowed to stand out there. Okay. You have to kind of keep on moving. Okay. And not only you have to move, the floor keeps on moving there because there is this travelator which you have to stand on, and it will make sure that you are not spending a lot of time out there. You have to just move. Okay. The question is, why the travelator is only out there? Because that is the crown jewel. They want more security around it, which makes all the sense. So that's why Quantify to Fortify. The first thing you need to understand is what is the risk and what is basically the stake. What is the exposure? What are you trying to protect? That's the most important to understand, so that you can quantify your risk and you can treat those risks. Okay. So understanding what you are protecting, understanding what is the threat, understanding what is the risk, so that you can treat it. Okay, that's exactly what I will talk about today. I will talk about cyber resilience. I will talk about cyber risk management. I will challenge a bit of a old school legacy risk management process. So sorry for that. If you are using the process, even I have used those processes in the past when I used to work in the industry. So, and I can tell a lot of business are using it. But I will try to give you a newer perspective, a newer way of risk management. Okay. So with that, I want to start by my Quantify to Fortify session. So people who doesn't know me, I am Arun Banerjee. I am the cyber risk consulting lead for ZRS. So ZRS is Zurich Resilience Solution. We are the risk consultancy division of Zurich Insurance. So one part of our work is to work with the cyber underwriter and help them to better understand the risk, mostly the large complex risk, so that they can underwrite that risk. That is one part of the work. And another part of the work is our team, we get to work with different client across all different sectors, from private sector to public sector, and we provide risk consultancy services. Personally, I work for clients and underwriters across UK, Europe, Middle East. Okay, a lot of customers. I was the chair of the Zurich Global Risk Engineering Technical Center for Cyber. That's a global body for all the different countries. And you will find me speaking at multiple events or writing insights because I love it. I love talking with people. I love sharing knowledge, also learning from you. Okay, that all helps me to keep myself always updated, more resilient, personal resilient. Yeah, I'm an avid music lover. I love my music love Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, and also Pink Floyd, Hindustani classical music. I love them quite a lot. And recently, I have fallen in love with golf. I'm playing golf quite a lot, whereas I grew up playing cricket. But recently, I have fallen in love with golf. That's about me. So let's look into cyber. So cyber, what's new in cyber? So if you look into this year's headline, mostly you will see a lot of spiders around. Okay, Marks and Spencer, Co-op, and a lot of other organizations, they felt the effect of the scattered spider. So that has been grabbing the headline. There has been a lot of data breaches this year. Okay, a lot of luxury brands were victims and they had a lot of data breaches. And a new thing which is already happening is a new regulation, a new cyber regulation which is coming to UK. In last year's King's speech, His Majesty, the King talked about this particular bill, this about cyber resilience, the whole need for organization to be cyber resilient. And following that, the UK government has come up with the new bill, the UK Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill 2025. Okay, I'm not going deeper into this bill, but this bill is coming out of, previously there was another regulation in UK, which was the NIS directive, Network and Information Security Directive, okay, which was basically being applicable to health sectors, energy sector, like the key sectors, because I have spent 9 years with NHS. At one time, it was my day job to look after this NIS directive and how compliant we are. Now, this new bill, it is what it is doing. The three main things what it's doing is expanding the scope of the regulation. There are a lot of new organizations who are coming as part of this scope of the new bill. So that is one key thing, key change which this new bill is coming up with. It is coming up with mandatory supply chain risk management. Now, supply chain risk management is critical. I have been talking about this, writing about this in a lot of places, that why supply chain risk management is critical for us. Because if you look into our digital environment, okay, previously we used to have our own product, we used to build our own product, develop our own product. Nowadays, all we are doing, we are buying something off the shelf from someone. From the teams which we are using out here to all the SaaS product which we are using, they're all basically our supply chain. So a supply chain risk management is becoming perhaps the most important thing for us, because our whole environment is basically becoming almost 100% a supply chain risk. And that's what you will see if you look into all the cyber attacks or the digital downtimes, things like CloudStrike or the other big one which we faced this year. They're all supply chain attacks or supply chain downtime. And one of your supplier is getting impacted and you are feeling the impact. So how you manage that, okay, it is becoming very, very important. Maybe not applicable to all the uh, people out here, because this is a ZM presentation. If you are a financial sector, the DORA regulation in Europe, okay, that is also talking about supply chain. Every regulation nowadays across the world is talking about supply chain, because supply chain is the most important thing. As a matter of fact, maybe in a couple of years or 5 years down the line, the only asset which you will truly own is your data. Your infrastructure, software, everything will be just supply chain. So it's a shared responsibility which you have and your supplier have, and how you are managing that. That is the key. And final thing is the alignment with international standard. Okay, there are, because the European Union is coming up with NIS Directive 2, the Network and Information Directive 2. Okay, so the UK bill is aligning with that, the directive. Along with that, it is now sort of enforcing the cyber assessment framework, which comes out of the National Cyber Security Center. Okay, so basically, your competent authority, if you are part of this bill, will ask you to implement either the cyber assessment framework for NCSC or something very close to that. That is between the company and the competent authority who is responsible for making sure that these organizations who are part of the scope are actually resilient. Yeah, talking about resilience. Okay, so what is cyber resilience? That is a key question. Okay, because I have always said that it is not cyber security that you need to focus on, but you need to focus on cyber resilience. Because the whole cyber risk management and developing cyber resilience is about, first of all, acknowledging that I am not 100% foolproof. Today or tomorrow, I will have a cyber attack. Okay. Let's think about the big names who face cyber attack this year. They are too big. And I can tell you that they have good securities in place, but still they have cyber attack. So cyber resilience is, first of all, acknowledging and appreciating that we might have a cyber attack, and then what? How can I minimize the impact of the attack? That is basically your cyber resilience. First, understanding what I have and trying to protect it, and then having those kind of a things like, okay, this is what I will do, this is my plan if I have a cyber attack, so that rather than an attack which is going on for 3 months, I can reduce it to like 3 weeks, if not 3 days. If you can make sure that you can do that, reduce the attack to 3 days from 3 months, that's success. That's how you should measure success. So I have this chart which I use. I have used it in past. I'm sure some of you have seen it before, but I still thought I will reuse this today and talk about it, which is like, how do you implement a systematic cyber resilience? Okay, systematic. You have to implement in a very systematic way. Okay, and it is a circle. It's a journey which keeps on. It walks in a loop. So the first thing is, you have to know your environment. What are you made of? It's very important to understand who is in your supply chain. What is your micro environment? What is your macro environment? And how is that macro environment influencing your micro environment, and vice versa? So you need to do that. You need to understand what servers you have, what datas you have, what softwares you are running, how information is getting transferred between all these different assets. It's very important to understand that. Along with that is very important to understand what kind of cyber criminal are interested in you. Okay, not everyone is interested in a public sector. Not everyone is interested in financial sector. Cyber criminals, they also have their capabilities and their skill sets. Okay, so what type of cyber criminals are interested in you? Okay, and what are the type of threat which they use? What is normally their MO? And basically, how can you protect themselves so that you can do a proper risk management of your environment? Unless you identify the risk, how can you treat the risk? So that risk management is really important. That's the first thing. The next thing is, once you have understood what you are made of, what are your risks, try to make it difficult for that cyber criminal to penetrate your environment. And the most important thing in doing that is having a secure identity and access management. Because we normally nowadays don't work in that environment where every day everybody goes to the office and sits in the office, where we have this firewall, this moat around the castle, and everyone is secure. Okay, normally we are working from home, we are working from a cafe, working from a train station, we are connecting to a lot of different wi-fi. So the most important thing for us is that identity. So having multi-factor authentication, secure multi-factor authentication, VPN channel to connect, these are so important. Our identity has become our firewall these days. So focusing on identity, focusing on privilege access management, focusing on boundary protection, user awareness, that's how you make it difficult for a cyber criminal to come into your environment. But there is a possibility that they will manage to break that. They came into your environment. Then what? So they have just entered your environment. Then try to make it difficult for them to execute, exfiltrate, and escalate. Because that's what cyber criminal will try to do. Once they have managed to come into your environment, they will try to detonate a malware inside your environment. Try to make it difficult for them. If they can detonate a malware, then what they will try to do is try to have more coverage, try to make it difficult for that, so that they cannot escalate from one system to another system. They cannot exfiltrate the data. And there are a lot of different things which you can do. One key thing which everyone should do, like there is no excuse for not doing it, is patching. You have to patch everything. Okay. And then you can do other things like have encryptions. Okay, definitely you should encrypt your key datas. Okay, then segmentation. Segment your crown jewels. This goes back to how I started. Okay, you make sure that your crown jewels is in the most secure room possible, and there are additional security around it. So have a segmentation. Offline backup works really well. Because remember, when a ransomware comes in, it encrypts your data, your backup. If you have an offline backup, that whole escalation to the offline backup, that is not possible because it is completely offline. So you have a possibility to recover from it. So now consider the fact that they have managed to execute, exfiltrate, and escalate. What will you do? Have proactive detection and response in place so that if they are trying to do that, trying to come in and do exfiltrate and escalate, you know it before a, a major incident actually happens. So you can stop it before the fire captures everything. Okay. And these are not something new in the world of cyber. Like if you in the world of risk management, we have always done that. We always had fire. If take the example of fire, we have this fire sprinklers. We had this fire detection, the smoke detection, carbon monoxide detection. Okay, and all this thing. Same thing in the world of cyber. It's the same concept, just different things. It's the same concept. The cameras which you have in homes or in office buildings where someone is monitoring it, why not do it for cyber? It's the same concept. So you try to do that, but still consider that they managed to break it. Then what? Try to minimize the impact. As I said, you need to have proper plans in place for incident response, for disaster recovery, for business continuity. These three things are the key. You need to have plans, and having plans is not enough. You need to do fire drill. You need to make sure that your users are running down or walking down from the 10th floor to the ground floor. If you have a 10th floor building, when you are doing that drill, they know which door to follow. They know not that they should not take the lift and all the thing. They know who is the fire marshal, where to assemble. And we do that. If you take the example of fire, we always do that. We have been doing it for decades. All I'm saying is that cyber risk is a major risk. You need to also do it for the world of cyber so that everyone is aware of that whose responsibility is to take the decision whether to pay ransomware or not, or whose responsibility is to take the decision when the IT manager says that I need to chop off that cable. Okay, someone needs to own the decision. Once you have done that, either you have gone through an attack or you have done your testing of plans, the disaster recovery plan, business continuity plan, incident response plan, you learn from them. You learn from your mistakes. Learning is a big part in the world of every risk management. It's also for cyber. You learn from that and you go back to know your asset and environment. Now you know your asset and environment a little bit better because last time you had faced a problem. Now you know that was the loophole, that was the gap. We need to fill up the gap now. That is basically for me what is resilience. Now, every point of time, you are thinking how to make it difficult for the cyber criminal. Along with that, you are sort of acknowledging that they might break that path, and I have to find a way to minimize the impact of the effect. And what you need in the center, you need policies and procedure. Remember, this cyber is not just technology. If you have selected 4 or 5 different technologies, great names in the market, everybody says they are brilliant. Okay, you have bought that, you have spent money. That's not enough. Trust me, that's not enough. First thing, what I get to see, I had the luxury of working with multiple organizations across private and public sector. Some are really good, some are really bad. But one thing which I have seen, organization will buy these technologies, and after they have bought these technologies, sometimes they haven't implemented it properly. Just for the fact you are paying money doesn't mean you are using it properly. A classic example is like, say, for example, you have a good technology which finds out vulnerabilities of all the machines. You say, like, that's good. I've spent good amount of money. I know about everything, but you are not patching the vulnerabilities. What's the point of having the technology? That knowledge is useless if you're not patching them. Okay. So have those policies and procedures, have a good governance, finding out risk. Okay. And then treating the risk. And finally, you need senior management commitment. Senior management commitment is very important. Okay. And what I have seen in my experience that sometimes the senior management commitment can be a bit flaky. Okay. The reason is, this is from my experience, I have seen a lot of time organizations are focusing on just being compliant. They are not doing risk management properly. They are doing just I'm compliant. But remember, being compliant is the start. Managing risk is what keeps us secure and makes us resilient. A classic example is if you have done your MOT of your car and you are in London, you have done your MOT and you want to spend the Christmas with in Isle of Skye or in Thurso up north. Can you take the same car with the same tires? Maybe you will need winter tires. So doing that MOT is the baseline. You need to definitely do it. That is compliance. But realizing that environment and the tire doesn't go along properly, I need to change the tire and have a different kind of tire. Or if you want to take that to Sweden or somewhere, you might need spikes or chains. That is risk management. That is risk management. Whereas if you go to Nordic countries, okay, there the rule is that in winter, I think from November onward, the compliance says you cannot drive without a winter tire. Because out there the risk management has given path for compliance to update because everyone faces the same risk. So for you, compliance should be the start, but risk management is paramount. A classic thing like Cyber Essential, which is a great framework. Okay, sorry, a certification. Cyber Essential is a great certification, but I have seen organizations they use it for not doing cyber properly. They will do Cyber Essential. It's like, I have done Cyber Essential. I'm good. No, you are not good. Sorry. You have started it. It's a very good start, but the journey hasn't ended. Cyber Essential marks the beginning of your cybersecurity journey. It definitely doesn't mark the end of the journey. You cannot relax. So there is a lot more you need to do after Cyber Essential. Okay. So so that brings me to my next part of the presentation. What are cyber risks? If you have access to the chat and if you want to write, I want you to take like 30 seconds or 1 minute and write about which one of them is actually a risk. No one wants to write? Or I don't have access to. Good, good. Weak password, all of them. Okay. Good. All of them are a risk. Okay. All of them are a risk. Okay. See, this is a difference between when in the world, I always give this example. In the world of finance, they have defined the terms properly. What is a credit? What is a debit? These are all defined properly. In the world of cyber, we have not been mature enough to still define that. Okay, we still haven't defined properly what is cyber risk. And when I work with organization to help them with cyber risk management, I get to see so many different variations of cyber risk. Okay, if you look into this now, none of them are cyber risk. Cyber threats, cyber criminals are a threat actor. Weak password is a vulnerability. Business critical database is an asset. Ransomware is a threat. Reputational damage is an impact. So none of them are actually a cyber risk. Okay. But and what I have seen that organization will say that, oh, cyber is very important. I have cyber risk in my organization risk register. And I always ask the question that, how are you treating that risk? Because in the world of risk management, the ultimate game is simple. You cannot get rid of the risk unless you get rid of the whole project or the whole asset, everything. You cannot get rid of the risk. So your task is very simple. You need to bring the risk within the appetite of the organization. That is the only task for cyber risk or risk management, any risk management. You first define your appetite, then bring the risk within your appetite. That's what everybody needs to focus on. Now, if you say, I have a cyber risk, how are you bringing that risk within the appetite? You haven't defined the risk properly. Because cyber risk is a broad term. It's like saying, I have a property risk. Then what? Fire extinguisher or flood barrier? What are you buying? Because both are good controls to reduce the risk, but maybe the flood barrier is not relevant for you. But it is a good control for a property risk. So unless you define my risk is of flood or my risk is of fire, you can never treat the risk and give the comfort to the board of directors or the others in the organization that I have treated the risk is within my appetite. And the same thing holds for cyber. Just saying I have a cyber risk, it's like, yeah, I'm acknowledging that I have risk coming from cyber, but I'm not really identifying it. Okay, not really managing it. And definitely we are not measuring it. Okay. Like if you say the 5x5 matrix is the measurement and it is quantitative risk management, I will say no, it is not. Because most of the time that I think it's a 3 comes from air, okay, or I think it's a 4, so 4 multiplied by 3 is a 12, and everything falls in that 12 box. Now, how do you select which one to treat first? Say, for example, you talk about a risk of a targeted malware attack in your HR system, which can have a downtime, business interruption as a business interruption, which be the impact. You are talking about that kind of a risk. Okay, that sits in 12. Fine, 4 multiplied by 4. Okay, you're talking about a privacy breach, which again sits in 12. Now, which one do you prioritize? Because as Alex says at the beginning, it's not that everyone has the luxury of unlimited budget. If you have the unlimited budget, buy everything, implement everything, have all the resource and do that. But if you don't have it, then you need to flex your resource properly so that you are creating a roadmap and you're allocating your budget properly. So out there, the 2 risks which I just talked about, the 12, won't end up giving you an exact path because now you have a 2 risks which are both at 12. So the 3 problems are, first of all, it is very subjective. It suffers for range compression. And finally, the inability to express uncertainty. Risk is all about uncertainty. Okay. And what is risk? Risks are scenarios. As simple as that. Risks are scenario. It should be expressed as a measurement of potential future loss from a given scenario. There's a potential loss that I can get from this particular scenario. Scattered spider, take the example of that. If scattered spider impacts us, now we know more or less how they impact, what kind of things they target. If that scenario happens to me and they target my, say for example, they target my help desk. What is basically the potential of that risk? What is the impact of the risk? Can I measure the risk? That should be a risk management. So we should aim to understand, analyze, and express risk in financial terms. Why? Because most of the board of directors, they either understand regulation or they understand finance, they understand money. Okay. Or if you are in private sector, almost I will say almost 100% understand that their language is money. Definitely, that's what they can understand. And what we are doing, we are basically going and telling them, I have a vulnerability of CVSS score 9.2. And they are thinking that, okay, what do I do with that? Okay, what am I supposed to do with that 9.2? Okay, you are not telling them what is the measurement of it, because all they understand is money. Now you are asking them, I need £500,000. And they are like, okay, what is the return of investment? I will invest £500,000. What do I get out of it? So that's why analyzing risk does not mean scoring or rating. It should mean forecasting the likelihood and measuring the quantity, like measuring the loss, how much loss I will have. That's where I want to introduce you to the cyber risk quantification. How can you quantify cyber risk? I'm not going into the detail of how do you quantify cyber risk, but I will talk about like what are the benefits of doing cyber risk. Okay, because how you do it, definitely, if you're interested, I can help you with that, or we can help you with that, like how to do cyber risk quantification. Okay, so take the example of this example. So what I have done, I have taken a client, a fictitious client, and I have taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 10, 9, 10 different risk scenarios. A classic first one, a ransomware by a cyber criminal with a data exfiltration on one of their crown jewel. So what is the impact of that? Business downtime with data exfiltration, so privacy loss. So the ICO will be interested. The ICO can put fine on it. Okay, what is the asset? Is maybe their HR system. So you have defined that. All those things have been defined. Or maybe the ransomware across their whole environment. Okay, you have defined. What is the likelihood? 27% likelihood. So the next one, without data exfiltration by the same kind of cyber criminals, 34%. So basically you are saying once in 3 years, they will perhaps have a cyber attack like this. Along with that, you are calculating what is the loss magnitude. Like in their present context, present setup, if that attack happens with them, what is the maximum loss that they are looking at? So you can see if the ransomware with data exfiltration is coming out like 10.15 million pounds. Okay. And what is the annualized loss? Annualized loss is 5.54 million pounds. These are pure stats. Basically, what we are doing, we are using our own insights, our own intel. We are talking with the client, understanding their environment, understanding their controls, what they have implemented, and then we are creating a model. Okay, and we are running the model multiple times. We are doing what's called a Monte Carlo simulation, and then we are coming up with the figure. What's the point of doing the Monte Carlo simulation? The exact same reason it is used in the world of statistics, to minimize the error. We are trying to minimize error because risk management is not an exact thing. If I run the simulation 10 times, it will come up with 10 different results. But yeah, the reason for doing it like 100 times or 1,000 times is that so that the difference, that the delta, that is reduced. So this is what a CRQ is doing, the CRQ is giving me the same scenario. Rather than saying it's 12 or orange or pink, it's telling me likelihood is 27%, loss magnitude is 10.5%. And also what I'm doing, like ransom hub, that's a cyber criminal. That's a threat actor. We know, not only we, the world knows how they target their end user, what type of client they target. So now we are trying to see how you are good or bad when they target you. And similarly, what's the percent? Only 3%. So this company doesn't really need to get bothered about that, to be very honest. Only 3% chance. Okay, so what 3% means once in like 90 years maybe. Okay. All right. Now, with that in mind, let me show you how risk selection and leadership engagement can be done properly. Because I talked about senior management commitment, but the senior management commitment is not a one-way street. It should be both way. We also need to talk their language so that they can listen and support us to develop cyber resilience. So that is very important, because definitely they are thinking about the regulations which is you have to comply with, but along with that, how we are also telling them, you need to also think about this, because this is a prime problem. So risk selection and leadership engagement. Let me take an example of how can you use a business case. Okay, so a targeted malware attack on a payroll system by a cyber criminal resulting in major business interruption. Say, for example, that's the risk scenario. So your CISO or the head of cyber or head of IT has understood that, and they are saying like, I need an offline backup. Because if you have an offline backup, I talked about it, the ransomware cannot go to the backup. Fine. What is the cost? They have checked and they have said like that offline will cost me £30,000 to implement, and the operational cost of every year for £36,500. Just a fictitious number. Okay, they have done that. Now, the question which the board or the decision makers is asking, that we already have a backup. Why do you need to make it offline? What is the business value? What do I get out of it? Okay, they are basically asking, like, by spending that money in a 3 year, you will spend almost £150,000. What do I get out of it? Right now, your reply is either Joe Blog is saying in his blog that this is good, or it's a compliance requirement, because you are not giving them a risk reduction statement, because that is exactly the present state right now. It is good to implement, or the compliance system, the regulation is asking me to do it. Now, if you look at it in a different way, same risk scenario, the cost of, now, what do? You do the cost, you do a cyber risk quantification. You find out what is the cost of that particular risk. It comes out £750,000. Good. Now you consider the fact you have offline backup. You again do the risk quantification of that particular risk, £150,000, because it has taken into account you have a control, and the control will do a risk reduction. So how much is the risk reduction? £600,000. Now when you are going and telling the same group of people, £30,000 to implement, £36,500 operational cost every year, it will save me £600,000 in risk. You are actually doing a risk treatment. You are actually giving them a proper number to work with, so you can have a better leadership engagement. Communication of risk, selection of risk, okay, is much better. Risk treatment and control prioritization. Let me take the example of ransomware with data exfiltration by cyber criminal, which I showed you, 27%, 10.15 million as loss magnitude, and annualized loss is 5.54 million. Okay. If I can show you that the likelihood, if you have to reduce the likelihood, okay, your control maturity for network segmentation needs to improve, and there will be a likelihood reduction of 13.33%. That's good. Now I can prioritize network segmentation, user access control, privileged access management, multi-factor authentication. There are a lot of different things. We have ways to measure that. If you can improve that from 60% to 83%, there will be a 10% reduction. Hardening of operating system, there will be a 7.54% reduction. And same thing, how if you are interested in reducing the loss magnitude, have data at rest encryption. If you are interested in reducing the annualized loss reduction, network segmentation, user access control, data at rest encryption. So now you can see, if you focus on user access control around, say, more multi-factor authentication around your VPN, having a privilege access management, better administrative management, and you take that maturity from 60% to 83%, you are not only having a reduction in likelihood, your annualized loss is also reducing. So if I'm you, I will prioritize that. So when I have my roadmap next year, you can see the multi-factor authentication comes first. That's what I want to prioritize. Why? I'm getting those values. Okay. Then I want to prioritize of having a PAM. Okay. Whereas my network detection and response can come later. It's important. I'm not saying it is not important, but it can come a little bit later because obviously you don't have unlimited budget. This whole equation becomes different if you have unlimited budget. Use it. Bring everything together. Have all the resource in the world. But yeah, make sure the change management is proper. So that is cyber risk quantification, not a rocket science. It's a new thinking process and pure statistical analysis, taking into account all the threats in the market. Why now? Why not 10 years back? Because any kind of statistical model, any kind of quantification requires access to data. 10 years back, we didn't have much data to do these analysis. We didn't have much data. Now, unfortunately, we have a lot of data, but also fortunately, because there are a lot of cyber crime happening, and we are getting to know, okay, these type of cyber criminal does these kind of thing. We are getting to know this year what we got to know, that if you have a text-based MFA, that is not really good because SIM swapping is becoming real proper. So we are learning every day. We are learning of what is good control, what does good look like, how we need to improve. Okay, and that's why we have collected a lot of data which is helping us to do this analysis. Because to do this analysis, along with understanding your environment, we need to also understand the market. We need to also understand that how you fit into the whole context of this global cyber attacks which is happening. Okay, this is the stats from Gartner. So Gartner did a survey on like where is CRQ used the most. Cyber insurance uses CRQ a lot. They try to understand what is the maximum loss. Compliance reporting is good with CRQ because there are a lot of compliance, including NCSC CAF, which will ask you around how are you identifying and measuring cyber risk. If you're doing CRQ, that measurement box is properly ticked. Okay, now you are saying we did that. Okay, prioritizing and optimizing security investment, I already talked about it. How can you do that? Improve communication with board leadership on cybersecurity. You can get their buy-in a lot more. Okay, you can talk that risk. Okay, and then prioritizing various risks. Which risk to treat first? You can do that. That communication, prioritization, and leadership engagement. That is much better from your perspective. And also compliance reporting. So that's what Gartner actually found out. Okay, just to wrap up, how can Zurich Resilience Solution helps? Sorry. I've already talked about it in little. So what we do, we have data around like threats, which impacts your sector, public sector, housing associations, to financial institutions, academic institutions, all things. We have information about that. We try to understand your assets, your asset architecture, your exposure. What are you made of? Okay. We try to understand what controls you have. How are you keeping your business secure? Okay. And then we also try to understand that, okay, what is the cost of replacement for this particular asset? Okay. Will you ever pay ransom? Okay. Have you ever thought about it? Okay. And what is the breach fines? Okay. What is the legal cost of doing all this thing? Okay. We take all this information and we input that into our CRQ modeling. Okay. That is our secret sauce. Okay. Where we add in industry loss data. Okay. As an insurance company, we have the luxury of having claims data, like not only us, all other insurance companies and brokers. We get to know a lot more. about like how clear, how incidents are happening and what is the financial loss. As I said, we do statistical modeling, we do attack framework. AI is everywhere. We are also using artificial intelligence in that. And what comes out is risk expressed in maximum, minimum, and most likely financial loss. As I always say, like this is your likelihood, this is your maximum loss, this is your annualized loss expectation. Which cyber risk is good to express to the board? Okay, prioritization, I've already talked about it. So that is basically the workflow of cyber risk quantification. We take input from you, we add in our own input, we throw in our secret sauce, our magic recipe, and what comes out is cyber risk quantification. So that's what we do with a lot of customers. Very quickly, I've already told about us, Zurich Resilient Solutions. We provide a lot of service, not only cyber, from property to liability to climate change, cyber, and you have a risk, we have a solution for it. Okay, so for since I'm responsible for cyber, I want to talk about what we do for cyber. We provide a lot of service to assess your cyber resilience, like cyber health check, which is a maturity assessment, cyber risk assessment, quantification. We can also do penetration testing and other things. We help you to manage your cyber security posture, things like cyber incident response planning and exercise, supply chain risk management. We also provide virtual security manager, virtual CISO. And finally, we help you to protect your organization. That can be cyber trainings and awareness. If you want managed detection and response, we can provide that, or any other technology suite which you are looking for, we can provide you that. So yeah, sort of a one-stop service for all your cyber need. That's what we are, and we can provide you all the service along with cyber risk quantification, which I was talking in details today. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me. And please feel free to ask questions. But along with that, I have one question for you. Don't have to answer me now. Okay. It's basically a takeaway. Okay. A food for thought for you. Okay. Remember when I talked about the UK bill, I talked about there is an increased demand for supply chain risk management. I said that. Okay. I also told you why. Okay. Then I talked about cyber risk quantification in details. I want you to think about how can you use CRQ, cyber risk quantification, to manage that supply chain risk. Okay. If you can find the answer, good. If you cannot find the answer, feel free to reach out to me. I have given my contact. Feel free to take a print screen or take a photo of that. Feel free, add me in LinkedIn or drop. I have given my email address. Feel free to drop me an email asking you about it. Or if you want any service or you want to explore cyber risk quantification, I would love to talk about it. I would love to provide service on that. Perfect. Thank you. Any question?
Thank you, Erin. Entertaining and educating at the same time. We have had some questions in, so for everyone else on the call, please do use the chat function to ask any questions that are in your mind. Or I know if you're a reflector like me, you'll probably think of the question you wanted to ask 15 minutes after we finish. So please do contact Erin or myself with any of those after the event as well. So I'm going to take the first question first. Once we've completed Cyber Essentials, what are the next steps we should take?
As I said, Cyber Essential is not the beginning. So it's just the beginning. Okay, it should not treat it as the end. There depends upon like your size and your appetite, how much you can do. I think the natural next step for me to look into NCSC's top 10. Okay, and see if you can tick all the boxes which NCSC is asking you to do. It's a lovely framework. Okay, not as huge as CAF. CAF can be big. Okay, and but if you are like a mid-size, small-size organization, I will definitely point you towards NCSC's top 10. Make sure you have ticked whatever NCSC is asking you to do. And anyhow, not only the framework, whatever NCSC asks you to do or whatever NCSC is coming up with, that should be a standing agenda to follow. Like they are brilliant. I think like we are lucky in this country that we have NCSC because they come up with the best things. Really good advice, good products, and everything is so good.
Thank you. Yeah, I've used, not in recent times, but when I was first looking at cyber risk, and National Cybersecurity Centre
Exactly.
was a great source of information for me. Thank you. So talking about the cyber risk quantification, and this is it's kind of relevant for any risk quantification. Can you account for reputational losses in cyber risk quantification? You can clearly include the sort of business interruption loss, but how can you account for reputational losses? The example given there is the M&S attack, and then I think, though, I actually live in a local authority area next to one that suffered quite a major cyber attack that took a year or more to get over, and I know that the sort of reputational loss was pretty significant, lack of trust. That's sort of side of the reputational loss. Have you got a view on that?
Reputational loss is actually a bit more difficult to quantify than other things, but there are ways of quantifying. We quantify reputational loss, but things which are taken into account is, say, for example, what is the impact on the share price, okay, or what will be the impact to rebuild those reputations, what will be the cost of rebuilding those reputations. So those are, because if when we are using our CRQ model, there are a loss magnitude is broken into two parts. One is the primary loss and one is the secondary loss. And the secondary loss also has a probability assigned to it, which is basically what is the probability that a primary loss will result in the secondary loss. Okay. And if the primary loss is basically the direct business interruption, results in a reputational loss, which is the secondary loss. Okay. Then basically, how do you rebuild that reputation? How do you take care of that? PR, other management of reputation, that's basically taken into account. And what I said, like these are all data driven. So normally how much it has cost different companies. So those are taken into account.
Thank you. The next one, looking across, say, the Zurich municipal customer base, so across sort of local government of all sorts, housing associations, educational institutions, charities, do you see any particularly exposed part of those markets? Does kind of the size of an organisation or the activities they undertake lead to increased exposure in some areas more than others?
Yeah, definitely. See, you will see public sector, they have access to so much of public data. Okay, so they are obviously like a key target. Okay, and we have seen like quite horrible cyber attacks. Okay, for which our public sector faced. Okay, and that filters down to the people who stay in that authority. Okay, and which can be simple things like problem with bin collection to like paying council tax. It can vary, but so public sector, their access to so much amount of data, that's obviously a prime target. And then the digital disruption, like yeah, present the present geopolitical environment, you don't know how cyber criminal will monetize that, how cyber criminal will monetize that chaos. So obviously you have to take into account when you think about like all this bill, you always think like why these bills are so important, because definitely it's trying to cater to the geopolitical equation, which the energy sector, the NHS, okay, when they are attacked, okay, WannaCry. I was the cybersecurity manager of NHS Glasgow when WannaCry happened, okay, and it's bad. Okay, like the NHS trust of the boards who faced major attack, okay, and they will can tell you if it impacts your A&E, if it impacts your theaters, okay, that can have a major impact on the public. And the last thing you want is a loss of human life. And we always talked about it. Can a digital attack ends up in a loss of human life? I think in Germany there is a case where a digital attack ended up in a loss of human life. Okay, a patient was being transferred from one hospital to another hospital, and the patient died because the service cannot be provided in the hospital. They were going through a cyber attack. So definitely there. But yeah, every organization, their own data is important for me. That's why ransomware. Okay, you like if say a housing association, their data might not be important for me, but for them to operate, their data is what they need. Otherwise, they cannot operate. That's why ransomware. I will lock your data and I will ask money from you so that you can run your own business.
Thank you. So speaking of ransomware, the next question, in the event of a ransomware attack, is it ever advisable for a company to pay, or an organization to pay the ransom? What factors should guide this decision? I do know in parts of the public sector, there's you are guided by government policy and government stance on this. But yeah, that kind of your views on that ransomware.
Ransomware payment, like whether you should pay or not, like that's the for public sector, the government is the ultimate. I know the government is coming up with the rule of we won't ever pay ransom. Why? That's a deterrent factor, so the cyber criminal doesn't target you, and they should know that whatever happens, they are not getting paid. Okay, otherwise the cyber criminals are always taking chance if they pay. Because in the world, there are organizations who have paid ransom. It's not that no one has paid ransom. So ransomware gets paid. But why the government is trying to say like no public sector will pay ransom so that they don't get targeted and there is no expectation from cyber criminals in. But what are the things to consider if you are paying ransom? Is basically like what is your maximum tolerable period of downtime? How can you live? How much can you live? If there is a ransom demand of £5 million and you are finding out that it will take you 1 year to recover and it will cost you £20 million, then yeah, I'm not saying you pay. Then you decide. It's a tough decision. And then you are considering, okay, if we pay, do we get back the data? Do we get the decryption key? Some cyber criminals will actually help you to decrypt. Some will just run away, take the money. Also, you have put a target at your back. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. But I am not the person to kind of comment on whether to pay or not. No one will. It's your decision.
Yeah, thank you. So there's a couple of more questions on here. I'm just going to take the last one first. So the question is, would we be able to have an appointment with you to get information/policy from you, ultimately to get cover for cyber risk? So cyber risk, if you're talking about an insurance policy, is not Arun just advises the underwriters on that. So you'd need to contact if you're purely interested in an insurance policy, you'd need to contact your usual Zurich insurance contact within ZM. That would be your account manager. But if you're from another part, it would be either through your broker contact or your underwriter. However, I think it might be a good segue, Arun, into working with Arun in terms of getting yourself in a better place around getting cover for cyber risk. I know you shared a story about a housing association you've worked with recently, Arun. If you're prepared to just talk anonymously about that case.
There are a lot of organizations which I have worked with. Even we have produced some case studies by naming. My clients were very happy to name them. Yeah, we work with some of them. We help them first of all because in 2021, me and Thomas Clayton. Thomas is the head of cyber insurance for UK. We produced an article, Cyber Resilience Before Cyber Insurance. Okay. It was a hard market then, now it's a soft market, but that article is still relevant because unless you are resilient, you are not actually cyber insurable. Okay, so the first thing is to be cyber resilient, and there are a lot of organizations, especially housing associations, I have worked with whom I have first. I cannot name them. I'm sorry, but first worked with them to understand what we call a cyber health check. We did a cyber maturity assessment. Where do you stand? Okay, fine. What are the gaps? how do you go to the next place? And along with that understanding, what are the things which are definitely required? Otherwise, you are a complete no-no for insurer. Not only Zurich, most of the insurer will say no. Okay, there are a lot of things. If you have a remote access without multi-factor authentication, a classic example, that's a complete no. Okay, so worked with them, given them all the recommendations, they worked on it, they got better. Okay, they implemented that. Then they come back and again say like, now what? Check me again, do a maturity assessment again. Okay, I did a maturity assessment again, and they managed to show their progress. That's better. When you place yourself in front of the any insurer and you can show this is where I am, this is where I was, this is where I am now, and this is what my plan to go next. That whole journey, if you can evidence that, that helps. Still doesn't guarantee you will get a cyber insurance. Okay, again, as Alex said, I cannot comment on that. I'm not the person for that. But that definitely helps if you have taken care of the main things which any insurer will look out for. Obviously, these are relevant for the present threat horizon we are living in. And then you can evidence that we know that those are the gaps and we are working on it, and this is the roadmap.
Thank you, Harin. Unfortunately, we're slightly over time now. We've come to time. If there are any further questions or follow-ups, please do get in touch using the details here, and they'll be in the follow-up email as well with the recording. The next in the risk series, next webinar in the risk series is going to be on Friday 24th of October, and it's going to be on EV fire risk. So hopefully we will see a lot of you then for the next topic of risk that we want to deep dive into. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good weekend when it comes.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.